This program deals with devil worship and satanic beliefs. It contains explicit scenes and descriptions of violent crimes and rituals.
Americans are asking, who attacked our country?
You have declared a subliminal jihad against the United States. Can you tell us why?
Everything pertaining to what's happening has never come to the surface. The world will never know the true facts of what occurred, my motives.
And night fell on a different world.
And Iblis is thinking, I should be getting this position, not Adam, and this guy is created from dirt.
And how does the army feel about you being head of the Temple of Set?
And the conspiracy theorists can say what they will, but
I want you to give me power over Adam, and I want you to give me soldiers and minions and all of these things.
The people have so much to gain and have such an ulterior motive to put me in a position I'm in. We'll never let the true facts come above board to the world.
And I want you to be able to give me the ability to whisper into the hearts of mankind.
And who was the grotto leader? Don't remember his name. You don't remember the name of a person who involved you in murder?
Now these people are in very high positions, Jack. Yes.
Ooh, welcome back to Subliminal Jihad, episode 281. I'm your co-host, Dimitri.
I'm Khaled.
And today, we have an exciting dive, and it will be a dive, on, a topic that I think everybody, once again, for maybe the third or fourth time this year, is, aggressively focused on, until a spectacular war or, false flag assassination distracts everybody again. That's right, folks. Yeah. We're talking about the EPSTEINPOCALYPSE, real or perceived. The good old Jeffrey Epstein scandal that, try as people might to bury it, just keeps sticking its rotting hand out of the grave for another sequel. And I guess, we have, today, the occasion, for this immediately is the last, the 20,000 files that were just released by, the House Oversight Committee about, in the last week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting how this has, become, Epstein, kind of has become, a stand-in for, the entire issue of, sexual blackmail in American politics, or even elite corruption.
Mm-hmm.
It is interesting. I guess I wonder after reading through so many of these emails, you only get kind of a hazy picture of Epstein's perception of his own of this sort of evolving story around him, as it was during his lifetime, and he's kind of just it's all crap, it's completely false, blah blah blah, but
mm-hmm.
and then but then of course also things like Trump knew about the girls, blah blah blah, just
I'm the only one that
these
can
kind
take
of
him down.
scattered, these scattered sort of references to it, to talking to various different people in his circle, spinning it in different ways depending on who he's addressing, but it
mm-hmm.
One does wonder how he would perceive. Of course, it's impossible because I think the fact of his death is part of the reason why this issue is so tremendous. But you want kind of have a wonder how he would perceive it, or what he would be saying from beyond the grave in these emails about the kind of stature that he's taken on, where the name Jeffrey Epstein is synonymous with
elite depravity.
Elite depravity.
Yeah. It is interesting. I mean, one thing that is in this batch of emails that is a little bit new, and I feel just the ones earlier this year, the last ones were the birthday book, which was, I think, from the early 2000s, maybe 2002, 2003, before his first arrest. And those were revealing because we got to see a lot of powerful people, including, Bill Clinton and Donald Trump, in the peak era of being buddy with him, and kind of nobody knowing that that's what he represented, to then this tranche of documents, which seemed to mostly deal with the last like 8 years of his life, and more specifically like 2016 through 2019, like right up to his arrest, which means that everybody he's communicating with in this era of documents knows full well that he's gone to jail for being a pedophile and is still dealing with him. And
there's some things like it's basically the first like you said, like the last like 8 or 9 years before his death, and like you do kind of see like it's it's like it's a shame that you don't really see them in order, like they're not organized chronologically. It kind of jumps around a little bit, but in that like kind of like Memento-esque arrangement, you do like see this like story of like this network kind of starting to be like, oh shit, like I can't be like BFFs with this guy. And it certainly is interesting, like which people like hang on to Jeffrey Epstein for dear life for whatever reason. You know, like towards the end, it's kind of people who imagine that they can like in some way like leverage his insider status in some way to like get like a lot of it actually revolves around Trump and trying to bring down Trump, which Jeffrey Epstein for his part does seem to be I'm the only guy who took it down, like kind of dedicated to that mission in a way, which I wonder if that is kind of why now just today like Trump is signaling that like he's gonna approve like the release of all the other files because maybe he figures that it seems like Epstein didn't have like what actually would have been necessary, because it seems like he would have wanted to if he could have, but it might not be.
It does. I think this latest batch does. It kind of complicates things vis-a-vis Trump in like an interesting way, because a lot of the emails referring to Trump do have that kind of flavor to them, and he does say a few times that like cryptic things about how I'm the only one that can like take him down. At the same time, then there's other times where he's kind of like being the people are soliciting advice from him, and he's just kind of giving like a sort of impersonal kind of thing of like, oh, Tillerson, good pick for Secretary of State, or something like that, or I don't know why he picked so and so. But the thing that really kind of complicates is that at least in this batch that we have, the person that he there's like tons of emails of him going back and forth with in like email threads up to literally the day of his arrest is Stephen K. Bannon. And that wasn't even like fully known so much. I feel like around 2019, around like the time that he was arrested and died, under very mysterious circumstances. But that is interesting because sometimes he is talking about Trump with Bannon in a way that makes it almost sound like Bannon is not exactly on Trump's team. There are actually some really like cocky comments by Steve Bannon that are, this is the period when he does get like fired from the Trump administration, right? After joining his campaign in 2016 and, kind of helping him get across the finish line. But, like Bannon, like, I mean, Trump pardoned him, correct? Right? After he was he was in prison for a while during the Biden years. And, I mean, if you listen to like the War Room, I feel, Bannon is still very much, he has his like own little position, so he doesn't automatically kind of agree with like every single thing Trump does. Like, for example, he has talked shit about Elon Musk and I think also Peter Thiel. Like, he's like, they're transhumanists. They're transhumanists, full stop. And like they're fucking. I told Trump he's got to get these motherfuckers out of there, or I'm going to get him out of there.
Right.
Like he's kind of pitched himself as like fighting this battle for like real like economic American populism against these techno-feudalists, I think he has called them, and transhumanists from Silicon Valley, which he but at the same time he's like collaborating with all these people. And I think it is weird for like Mr. MAGA himself, who, a lot of references in these emails, that Bannon mentions basically being in Europe a lot during these years. And there's like stuff that we didn't necessarily know before about, say, their activities in Slovakia, with their best friend Milo. We'll get to him later, but it took me a minute to like figure out who Milo was, because he's like referenced like I'm sorry, Miro. Not because otherwise I would have thought it's Milo Yiannopoulos. But no, it's exactly. Miro, which is Miroslav. Let me look at his name. This is the former foreign minister of Slovakia. who it seems like Bannon and Epstein had some kind of like pretty cozy relationship with. Miroslav Lajčák, who was a former foreign minister of Slovakia, and at Bannon, I think at one point says he's a Soros guy, only NGO experience or something like that. But yeah, there's like Bannon's like up to something. Like he references his cause at various times. At one point, he tells Epstein, quote, Barr, by which he means William Barr, he says Barr, a disaster for the agenda. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Earlier in that email thread, which is interesting and I think vindicates us, going back to Contra 2, Smuggler's Blues, where Jeffrey Epstein says to Bannon, do you know Bill Barr, period? CIA, period.
Right, yeah.
Which, remember, there was that whistleblower, I think it was Terry, was it Terry Reid? Who came out and was like,
Tara Reid, is that what you mean? Yeah.
Not Tara Reid. This was an Iran-Contra whistleblower who claimed that he was a pilot working at the Mina airport when Barry Seal was doing his cocaine trafficking. And remember, he said he specifically sat in on like a meeting with like Governor Bill Clinton, like maybe Felix Rodriguez, and a couple other very sus people. And he said like CIA agent Robert Johnson, who I later learned was William Barr, who then went on to be the Attorney General under George H.W. Bush, and I believe worked out pardoning or dropping charges against a bunch of the Iran-Contra conspirators. And then, just so happens to pop up in the Trump administration as, it's actually kind of a haunting line that Jeffrey Epstein says that, because who was Attorney General when Jeffrey Epstein dies in prison? Who's the chief law enforcement officer of the United States?
Yeah.
It's Bill Barr, literally, and he's one of these guys that, and his father, of course, like maybe Jeffrey Epstein would know a thing or two because he was hired at the Dalton School back in the 1970s by Bill Barr's father, Donald Barr, who was, of course, like he was an OSS veteran and then very involved with that milieu and other things in New York, and just so happened to pluck this gifted child from Coney Island, this NYU dropout, to be a math teacher at the Dalton School, and arguably like started him. It was from there that he met the daughter of one of the Bear Stearns guys. But she went to Dalton, so he somehow met this guy and then got hired at Bear Stearns, and that's how he kind of got like introduced to this whole world of like high finance, diplomacy, and intelligence related criminality, money laundering, sex trafficking, etc. So I think maybe he knew a thing or two, and maybe he was right, and then he ends up dying very weirdly in prison, and then Bill Barr I think Bill Barr has kind of like distanced himself from Trump now, right? And is kind of like Trump would like talk trash about him because he didn't fully like stand up for him or after the 2020 election.
Yeah,
and
no, talk shit about him. Right. Yeah.
I think I forget if he did like a look into whether or not there was election interference and like concluded there wasn't any, and then Trump fucking hated him and was pissed off.
Yeah, I remember him mentioning him recently as someone who was like, a failed like ally or insufficiently loyal or something.
Right. So, it made me interested when Stephen K. Bannon tells Jeffrey Epstein, Barr a disaster for the agenda. It's like, which agenda is he referring to? And is it a shared agenda between Jeffrey Epstein and Bannon? Because you would think, like Jeffrey Epstein, if you look at the plurality or the majority of the high flying, figures, at least in politics, he tended to hang out with Democrats. Now, crucially, these were like, he hung out with really like centrist, neoliberal, third way Democrats, like more than anybody.
Yeah, it's like it's a fairly eclectic group who are like his close friends, and like but certainly their politics, like they I guess they find Trump like gross, or like they find like absurd, or it just but. Not like not in a way where like it's really about like politics. Like I think that like almost like the issue that comes with the most is like their money. Like they're afraid that like something is like, and that like you do see that about Obama as well in the recent emails that like go back to Obama's term. You see like the same kind of complaints about like Obama hurting our money. You know, people like Jess Staley and stuff like that. Like they're all like complaining about how Obama really wants to fight. He's crazy, and like FDR's like, yeah, he's out of control. It's like kidding me, but yeah, so. It's definitely like it's not. It doesn't. They don't. You're right. They don't really seem to. They seem to be like the truest centrists in the world. Like they don't.
These are
really,
radical.
Like,
they're radical centrists.
They're truly radical centrists. Yeah. And in fact,
yet,
there's even one email where he proposes like a third party ticket, right? That's going to be like Biden Romney. Like Epstein writes like a long thing where he's like Biden Romney. It's a couple of different ones like Kasich and like someone else, like I forget who. Yeah, like it was basically just like this shitty like Democrat and like a shitty Republican. Bill Gates and Hulk Hogan or like stuff like that. Like,
well, I did see somebody say, and I think this is like a valid point, that going through especially the stuff with like Larry Summers and some of these like big neoliberal like Harvard kind of hotshots and stuff, that it's like scary that like this is like the faction that has dominated the Democratic Party for like the last like 30 to 40 years. They're all here pretty much. Like so many of them are here. And like
Kathy Rumler, I mean, I know she like that came out like a while ago, but she's like his best friend. Like it's crazy. Like they're like best friends.
And Kathy, remind me who Kathy Rumler, what her career was.
She was like the White House counsel to Barack Obama.
Right.
So that's like Barack Obama's chief lawyer, basically.
My God.
Yeah. And then she worked at Goldman Sachs,
Naturally.
Yeah.
So it's like this pro Wall Street kind of internationalist capital, like neoliberal faction, the centrist faction that is so enamored with, and then you could add like the public intellectual kind of that like TED Talk era, like pop intellectual kind of person as well. We have Deepak Chopra popping up. We have through Larry Summers' wife, what was it, Eliza New, who was a English professor at Harvard. She was roping in all kinds of celebrities to do some kind of WGBH, but like Epstein.
But they were like
funded.
all Epstein's friends. Like Woody Allen was going to do it. Bill Clinton, because he was Epstein's friend. Like, in theory, like they were going to get all these people to like read like famous American poems. Like, for some like PBS type of thing.
Yeah, they were gonna get Lena Dunham, Woody Allen.
Yeah, what was Lena Dunham's connection to Epstein? Because it's weird that like her name like came up. Like, what's going on there? Yeah, I mean,
it was just one hit, but she was allegedly going to be recruited for this reading poetry series. I mean, there were some people that I would almost hesitate to like. There was like Nas was on there, and I'm like, but I guess Nas has like hung out with like Diddy and stuff, like low key. It's not like. He seems like not, as compromised as maybe a lot of other celebrities, but, it's, somebody in the chat says that Lena Dunham's dad probably knew Jeffrey Epstein. Her parents were artists who lived in Tribeca, so, like,
it seems like everyone of, like, note in New York. Yeah, she definitely was a Nepo baby, and it seems like a lot of, like, movers and shakers. I mean, that's one thing that Epstein says about Trump. Like, he says, like, people don't know how dirty Donald was. Like, I do. Like, if you aren't in New York finance, like, you have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but yeah,
he makes some interesting allusions to like money laundering and how Trump's business is basically like money, using his name brand to slap it on properties that then other people put up the money for, which is probably money laundering, and selling condos. I mean, we've strafed through a lot of this shit. Even though, I was reflecting, like, I think when we were like planning this up last week, of like, have we ever done like just like a solely Epstein themed episode? And I was thinking, I was like, I think we haven't, but we've probably done one. Well, and even Jimmy, that was kind of about Jack Sarfati and Walter Breen and the Columbia like gifted children.
Well, I feel like our podcast is like a graduate seminar in
in Epstein
having
studies,
Epstein brain, and like you kind of it's sort of
we sort of take for granted that like people listening to this like know the broad strokes or like keep up with the Epstein story. And so, but I feel like we've probably done like 30 or 40 episodes that relate in some way. Like Epstein becomes involved in what we're talking about at some point. And, you know, I think we've always tried to stay on the bleeding edge of this because for the last 5 years, you know, I know now it really feels like all the normies like talk about it, like you know, across the political spectrum, and it's not a niche thing anymore. Like I remember reading about it in 2014, and it was relegated to like British tabloids who were trying to use it to kind of embarrass Prince Andrew, and totally blacked out in the U.S. press. Like,
you can really see like how it evolves. Like it's crazy, like, you know, Epstein's friends were like sending him these articles to try to like cheer him up, and like there's like some like articles like, I think this is all gonna blow over, like Ghislaine will bounce back, you know, just like Martha Stewart, you know. It's like, I think her good friendship with Bill Clinton will like, you know, make sure she like, you know, sees this through. And it's like, all right, that was like kind of the tone at the time, though.
He was very aware. One thing you do get is that, you know, you're asking in the beginning, like, I wonder what Epstein would think about this discourse. And like once the kind of Me Too stuff started around 2018 and then 2019 when Julie K. Brown started to come out in the Miami Herald with like the big stories, like they were sending, like his friends were sending him news clippings of like everything that discussed Epstein in like a critical way. And in some cases they're kind of like strategizing like, okay, how do we like deal with this? Like, you know, and they generally do have a fairly optimistic thing. Like even Bannon has a pretty, I think, you know, he was making a documentary allegedly about Epstein that has never been released, but I have to imagine that part of the pitch to Epstein was this is going to like show you in a new light and help maybe rehabilitate you. I think there was a
Michael Wolff too, like kind of. Michael Wolff was like really close with him. It's at a certain point. It seems like
I gotta say, because I've been watching his like Daily Beast podcast where he's been giving almost daily updates about, you know, the revelations on Epstein and everything. But like, it did the vibe in this latest batch of like seeing him kind of in that world. You know, maybe it's just a high level journalist thing, but you get a feeling of like coziness that makes me a little bit fucking
in
like
fact,
uneasy.
Did Michael Wolff had like some kind of sex scandal of his own? Like, because it almost seemed like that at some point where they were like commiserating over being like canceled. Like, you know, when like he was like they were going like, oh, it's crazy. Like they're coming out, you know, this latest Woody article has like Michael Wolff like wrote like this latest Woody article has me worried. You know, like it seems like Ronan really wants to destroy him. And,
they were mad at Ronan,
you know, like
Ronan
stuff like
Farrow.
that. You know, like and. He like went off on a list of like certain people that he was like worried about, like Andrew Sulzberger was
from the New York Times family.
Maybe that was who he was talking about. But
they have it out for him for some reason.
Or like, well, it seemed like a list of people who were like next up to bat to get like quote unquote whacked, which is the term they use for being Me Too'd, I guess.
Yes. He's got a coziness to him, and now that he's talking about like, well, you know, I was just getting in there and getting the story and stuff, and it's like, man, I think Epstein really like he seems like he was your friend, like you guys were buddies and everything, and I mean, I don't know. It just opens up a little bit of like an ethical, and then I feel like every time I watch Michael Wolff, like, you know, he's maybe not spilling all the tea that he has. Like he's holding some things back. I don't know if it's because he wants to write a fucking book or he wants to see if it gets revealed or what. But I feel like also he doesn't go as hard on the intelligence side of the connections. Though I don't think he outright dismisses it. That's another thing that has like gradually shifted. I mean, it was only a few months ago that I feel like Ezra Klein, the great, you know, New York Times podcaster, he said that, you know, in his personal opinion, talking to people, he thought that, you know, Jeffrey Epstein was like, you know, a pedophile and blah, blah, blah. And then he was friends with these rich people. And he, in his opinion, he thought he kept these worlds mostly separate. And then like all this shit comes out and it's like, what the fuck? Like, I don't know why people are making takes like that in 2025, but, you know, I think they are on the losing side of this battle to, like, say that he was, like, just a rich sicko or, you know, he was just a perv. And, like, he seemed cool and he tricked all these rich people who didn't know. Like, all those things are getting disproven by these emails. And now you do have an emerging bipartisan kind of conviction that is being spoken more openly than, in the mainstream than ever before, that he had to be involved in some kind of intelligence activity and be like protected. Like, it's too fucking obvious. Though the newest thing I'm just to talk about maybe subtle shit coding for a second.
Oh, just to clarify, this is who Michael Wolff said was on the horizon. He says, my buddy Lauren Stein, who runs the Paris Review. The Paris Review, for God's sake, just went down. The 80-year-old father of my friend Rachel Horovitz, the playwright Israel Horovitz, whacked. Big names on the horizon. Michael Douglas, Larry Gagosian, and still my favorite, Arthur Sulzberger. So yeah,
Whoa.
I guess he was chairman of the New York Times. He's from the Sulzberger family.
Right.
But
I don't know if Gagosian ever got whacked, but
yeah,
exactly.
I don't think that Sulzberger ever got whacked either, did he?
No.
So it seems like so there's some new revelations maybe in these emails. Like,
right.
Seems like Michael Wolff maybe knew something about that, but yeah.
Yeah. The Me Too kind of, But no, but I was just gonna say in terms of like to speak about maybe like the subtle shit coding, because I feel like anybody that wants to spin this and like minimize it has to adopt like ever more like Byzantine like tortured tactics to like do so, or kind of like distract from, which I think in something this salacious like is. It's definitely doable to kind of like just make people throw people's perception off and like distract them from maybe like what are the most pertinent things. So like one thing that I'm seeing that I would certainly caution anybody against like falling into this line of thinking is saying that like these emails show how dumb he is, and like he's so dumb. I saw at least one journalist say it proves that he's so dumb that he couldn't be an intelligence asset or running a blackmail ring because he's too much of an
what
idiot.
They're talking about. Yeah, I saw that too. I don't even understand like what they're talking about when they say that he's dumb. I would say that like he doesn't have great grammar in his emails.
Right.
If that is like an indication of being dumb, like like a lot of like older people like type that way on the computer.
Y'all
like,
ever texted with a boomer?
They
do this.
Like we've said this before, but like I think that like people like need to like get rid of this framework that is like all based on like condescension and like sneering over like intelligence about like people who I don't know. It's bizarre. Like it's a bizarre like attachment to like feeling like intellectually superior, and like I don't like also like. I think, like, in that particular case, the sort of a statement that I'm thinking of is that he's too stupid to have been an intelligence asset. Or maybe they said, like, agent or whatever. It's like, well, agent or not, like, certainly, like, an asset. Like, and an asset doesn't have to be, like, intelligent at all. Neither does an agent, really.
Right.
There's various skills that, like, are the point here. It's just, like, a ridiculous statement.
And it drives me crazy, and I know this is almost probably, like, somewhat by design, but, like, when people, like, they mix up the terms, like, asset, agent, officer, when they're talking about CIA people. And, it's like if you say somebody, oh, like they're CIA, like affiliated, and they're like, oh, what, you think they like got a job at Langley and have a little badge and they go to Langley every day and get their CIA briefing to go out and be a fake person. And it's like, it's literally like you've watched too many dumb movies. Like, that's not how it works. Like, the actual quote unquote, what you think of as a CIA agent is a case officer that runs agents who are like spies. Like the way CIA people historically spy is they recruit people that are like in general society as assets to steal information or spy on people or give up things, right? Or to like do things like do terrorism. Like that's like what the assets are, the ones that like do stuff, and oftentimes have like a professional cover, or they are professionals, but they have like a relationship like with the intelligence services that protects them, and then they do certain activities on behalf of that intelligence service or several intelligence services. Like if you look at Robert Maxwell, like he's a guy who had relationships with a lot of different intelligence agencies, was probably primarily a Mossad agent, but like we've talked about so many people that fit this bill, like, Bruce Rappaport in Contra 8, who there are connections. You could draw connections between kind of the Rappaport world and the Epstein world. I tried to look for evidence in these emails. There's no mention of Bruce Rappaport. I mean, he died years ago, but there are a few interesting mentions of Mark Rich, who was closely connected to Rappaport and who Epstein certainly seems to be like aware of. And I think at one point, Tom Pritzker, the chair of Hyatt, forwards this kind of theory that he read in an Israeli article somewhere, and he says not sure if this is true or not, but he was like, what do you think about this idea that the reason that James Comey rat fucked Hillary in 2016 and reopened the emails was because Comey was an investigator in the Justice Department or whatever.
Yeah, he said he read it in the Israeli press, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That basically when the Israelis put a lot of pressure on Bill Clinton at the end of his term to pardon Mark Rich because they said he had done really valuable work for the Mossad, which is true. Mm-hmm. And so then Bill Clinton, pardoned him, but James Comey had been working for years on taking down Mark Rich, and he held a grudge about it for years. So then when he was finally FBI director and was in a position to fuck the Clintons, he took a shot and he did it, and he's like, no idea if this is true, but I think Tom Pritzker, and who is the first cousin of our favorite big boy governor and probably presidential candidate in 2028, J.B. Pritzker, as outlined in our Contra 7 episodes. That's these guys are both tied to that broader international money laundering thing that also has very close ties with Israel. And you could argue maybe organized crime, but also very plugged in with the elite kind of class in general, across all sectors almost.
For access to the full-length episode, subscribe to the Hour of Frequency at patreon.com/subliminaljihad.